Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we have episode 77, and we have got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the stuff that happened this weekend. There isn't really much. We had 4 cards in total. To be honest, I haven't seen any of PFL Africa or of BKFC's card. I did see the UFC card. I thought that was pretty fun for an Apex event. Fluffy Hernandez is really impressive. I also saw the Mirko Cuello fight and the Albert Ramirez fight. Good performances there, so we'll talk about that. But the main topic of today's episode is going to be UFC's new rights deal. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about boxers' new rights deal. We've had tons of fights announced over the last few days, so let's just hop right into it and start with UFC. It was announced Monday morning that they have signed a $7.7 billion deal with Paramount Plus and CBS over 7 years, so from 2026 through 2032, I believe. UFC will be exclusively on Paramount Plus. Every event is going to be on there, with select events on CBS, mainly the numbered events. And what really is most important about this deal, no more pay-per-view. Pay-per-view is officially dead with the UFC. After 2025, after 323, I think is going to be the last event of this year. There will no longer be any pay-per-view events, at least not in the foreseeable future. And they're moving towards a non-pay-per-view only calendar. We're still going to get 43 events in total next year, and for every year of this deal, where it's going to be 30 fight nights and 13 numbered events. So it's not like they're changing up the formula or anything. We're still going to get, for example, we have 319 coming up this weekend. The only difference, we would still get that caliber of cards with the title fight, much more stacked events. The only difference is that it wouldn't be behind a paywall. It would be essentially the same viewing-wise as any other fight night, except for that some of those events will be on CBS as well, on linear free-to-air television, which is really, really great for the sport, I think. It seemed like they were all of the networks are kind of moving away from that. Obviously, Top Rank was the last one on a linear network with ESPN, and they just left that for the first time in I don't even know how long. There will no longer be boxing on any network in the U.S. It was the same with Boxer. They just announced that they're going to be on BBC, so we're going to talk about that, but that's in a few minutes. As for the UFC, my thoughts, I love it. I love it so much. I saw Happy Punch put out a graphic that apparently the cost of watching every single UFC event in 2025 is like $1,060 or something because of all the pay-per-views, which is nuts. And in theory, the price that it'll be next year is going to be $120 for the whole year, which is crazy because you can get Paramount Plus for as low as $8. And then you can get it for $13 if you want it ad-free. Now, I do believe that we're probably going to get a price increase. It just makes sense, And even, just looking at, the budget that UFC is getting, they're getting, what essentially equals out to about a little bit over $1 billion a year. And what's important about that is that with ESPN, they were getting, I think it was for 5 years they were on ESPN, and it was like a $500 million deal. So I think that they were only getting, it was a $1.5 billion deal over 5 years. So they were getting about $300 million. So they're getting way more money over these next few years to put on their events. Obviously, that's going to pay the fees that the pay-per-views would normally cover, but this also hopefully means that we're going to get better fighter pay, especially with the pay-per-view points and champions not really going to be a thing anymore. It's probably just all going to be, upfront getting paid what they do in their contract. Everybody knows that UFC, compared to other major sports organizations, does not pay its athletes equally or as much as they would earn in another sport. They hold on to a lot more of that money for just the revenue of the company. So hopefully this means that they're going to start paying fighters more. We'll see. There's still so much to unpack from this new deal. I'm a big fan of it. It's going to be a one-stop shop for everything UFC. And, them moving away from pay-per-view is just great because everyone's going to move away from pay-per-view. Turkey said he's moving away from it, which really only leaves the other promotions on DAZN, like Matchroom, Golden Boy, Queensberry. If they ever choose to do a pay-per-view, I guess they could in theory. But to be honest, when you look at those promotions, the only one that's put on a pay-per-view event since joining up with Riyadh season is Queensberry when they did Usyk Dubois this past month, and even that was kind of backed by Riyadh season. Other than that, I mean, I don't think that Boxer's going to be doing any pay-per-views. BBC, certainly not. Top Rank, we don't know where they're going to end up. The only big one is PBC, because we know PBC still puts on a lot of pay-per-view events. I think that should PBC, once they leave Prime Video and figure out a new deal, I think that we'll probably start to see them no longer do pay-per-views as well, just because, the whole model is starting to go away, and UFC is the industry leader, so them leaving, kind of sets up that. So, but anyways, as for UFC, this is great. I'm so excited. The first event will be 324 in January. I'm super excited to see if any of the production changes. I see some people pointing out, well, this means they're not going to be on ESPN anymore. That really helped being on ESPN because you get promoted by ESPN so much. So we'll see if there's any change there, because CBS is like a sports organization, and Networker is nowhere near as big as ESPN in that regard. But hey, I love this. I'm super excited for this new deal. Unfortunately, Dana White says that there is still potential for future pay-per-views, so he's not saying the pay-per-view is like completely dead. I think that essentially what he's saying is, there may be a time where, like, okay, we need to put this on pay-per-view. If it's something like Conor McGregor, Ilya Topuria, maybe something like that, they'll decide, yeah, let's go ahead. Let's put this on pay-per-view because that's a cash cow waiting to happen. And maybe that is the case. But I think that that's not the plan at the moment. He also said that the White House card will absolutely happen, and that is going to be on CBS. That is totally a card you want to put on CBS. And if you just think about the amount of viewers they could be getting 20 to 30 million people, theoretically, just on a random numbered event if you put it on CBS. So that's way more people watching it than watch the pay-per-views, at least legally. So, yeah, I mean, I know that most UFC fans don't even buy the pay-per-views. They just stream it on, like, some other sites. But if people are saying, oh, like, this doesn't, like, why are you guys celebrating? This isn't really affecting you. And they're saying, well, it is, because now we can watch it HD without it glitching out. And so it's kind of funny, but this is still just so good for the sport and the fans in general. We're also hearing, this is just a rumor, that Paramount is now the front runner as well for the TKO boxing. Obviously, it's the same company, so they're now interested in that boxing league as well. And I find that very interesting to know that this is going to be a much more organized promotion being put together, and that it wouldn't be going to Netflix. Because at first it was like, okay, maybe there's just going to be super mega events, only a few a year, which would be under Netflix probably. Then they want to, build up everything and be like UFC, but for boxing. So you do need a consistent networker there, and I just assumed it would be DAZN or Netflix. But I mean, did anybody really expect Paramount to be the guys to get UFC? I think that we were all expecting Netflix to get that. Obviously, we know that. That was what the UFC wanted. We know that they were trying to get a Netflix deal, and we also know that in this deal, it was meant to just be Paramount holding the fight nights, and that the numbered events would go to another media partner. And so I think that they had agreed that, okay, let's try and differentiate the products here. Netflix probably said that they weren't interested in putting on every UFC event a year, and maybe they were only saying we only want the pay-per-view level ones. So that was why they would have shipped them out to Paramount. But then after this Paramount Skydance merger finalized on Thursday, within 48 hours they made a deal. So I think it's just the new heads at Paramount said, no, let's try and get all of them, and let's pay up. And they paid big time. So this is good. I'm excited. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. So we've got a few more months, 5 more pay-per-views in total, I think, to bring out the money for. And then we are on to a bright, bright new future for mixed martial arts. Speaking of mixed martial arts, speaking of UFC, speaking of free events, let's talk about Vegas 109 this weekend at the Apex. Fluffy Hernandez, my goodness, what a breakout performance. Completely dominated Roman Dolidze. First round was like a little bit, like he was just it was taking his time, and then pretty much once the second started, you were just seeing a big skill and pressure and cardio gap between them. I mean, Fluffy Hernandez just has no break in him. And he was just pushing Roman through the gears. And you could just see Roman just fatigued and just not wanting to be in there anymore. And I was watching it, and I was like, dude, like, his corner may just, like, pull him out in between rounds here. Like, he's just got nothing left. He can't get anything going because Hernandez just will not let him breathe. And then he gets, honestly, one of those badass submissions you've seen in a while. He's dragging Roman across the cage, choking him out. Just unbelievable stuff. And then he gets the tap. So that was a great performance from him. He's calling, I want a top. He wants the middleweight title shot. Wants to be a top 5 middleweight. I don't think that he's quite up there yet. The fight that I see, Reinier de Ridder just narrowly beat Robert Whittaker. Fluffy Hernandez RDR is a fight, dude. That is a 50-50 fight. You probably favor Fluffy in that one because RDR did look like he had some holes in his game against Bobby Knuckles. So I really like that fight. I think that one's next. Put that on a pay-per-view while we still have them at the end of the year maybe. And yeah, that's a brilliant fight in my opinion. So I like that. Co-main event, you had Steve Urseg coming off of 3 back-to-back losses and getting a win over Ode Osborne. It was close. It was. Some people, I think, thought that Osborne could have won. I don't think that. I think that Osborne certainly had the first round. I think that Urseg certainly had the third round. It all just comes down to the second, which I did give to Urseg, and he really needed that one because it would be 4 and a low. It would be rough. Be very, very rough. So I'm glad that he got into the win column. He's one of the good guys in the UFC. I really like him. It wasn't the best performance, and I think, honestly, the more impressive of the two was Ode Osborne just because we expected Urseg to get the victory. I don't know who a good matchup for him would be because it does kind of feel like we saw him just over a year ago fight Pantoja and arguably beat him. Then he gets knocked out by Kai Kara France. Then he gets beaten by Brandon Moreno. So it was just kind of and then he struggles to beat Ode Osborne. So I don't know. He's still a little bit shinny there. I'm not sure what his level is in the UFC just because he's had such an odd career in his last few fights. But who knows? We'll see where he goes from here. You had Yasmin Lucindo beating Angela Hill in what I thought was a pretty strong performance by her. Andre Philly beat Christian Rodriguez. I don't know how that was a split decision. I had Philly winning all 3 rounds. I guess the third could have been close, but I don't know. Gian Matsumoto beat Miles Johns. That was a little bit of a controversial one. I also scored that one for Johns, although it was narrow. Christian Leroy Duncan with a great finish over Eric Anders. Julius Walker had a dominant win. Elijah Smith, with maybe the finish of the card, besides the main event potentially, with a slam. No, this was the finish of the card. Slam KO over Toshiomi Kazama. Unbelievable. He picks him up. He's already got him. And he picks him up off the ground and just slams him. Head bangs on the mat. Ref steps in. Unbelievable. That was one of my favorite finishes I've seen in the UFC because it's just so wild. That was great. I loved that. Jocelyn Edwards had a great knockout as well over Priscilla Cachoeira. Euros Medic, great first round knockout over Gilbert Urbino. 3 back-to-back first round KOs. He was awesome, man. You had Eric McConico edge out a win over Cody Brundage in a pretty close fight, and Gabriela Fernandez have a mostly good performance over Julija Stoliarenko. So that was the whole card. I thought it was pretty enjoyable. My standouts were Fluffy Hernandez and Elijah Smith, Medic, Edwards, like I said, Christian Leroy Duncan. There was a lot of fun stuff on this card. I did enjoy Urseg Osborne a good bit. So it was a fun Apex card. And listen, the Apex cards aren't going anywhere. We're seeing that we're going to have 43 events next year on Paramount Plus. We're 1,000% going to get more Apex cards. I don't hate the Apex. It is kind of boring. It is kind of quiet in there. But this just builds up the schedule and it keeps the fighters active. And you do get low-key bangers like this. It reminds you, they don't need to be top level fighters to give us great fights. They just need to be evenly matched, and that's what the UFC consistently does, and you still had a good event. The other bigger card this weekend was Mirko Cuello and Sergio Rios. Cuello ran through Rios in 2 rounds. I was impressed by him. I was not loving his performance last time in February against Christian Olivo. He barely won that fight with a 10th round finish. And he was obviously already mandatory to fight Nick Ball. Now he's the interim champion. And I think that him versus Nick Ball is a phenomenal fight. I don't know who wins that. Nick Ball obviously has an important fight this weekend against Sam Goodman. But after that, I think we'll see Ball versus Cuello ordered, and I'm totally down for that. He's a really, really fun fighter in this division, and featherweight's really good, and I feel like we're missing a big, big fight there because there's just so many guys who can argue that they're number one, really every champion in the division. I think it's Rafael Espinoza, but you can argue Stephen Fulton, you can argue Angelo Leo, you can even argue Nick Ball. And then you've also got guys like Bruce Carrington, Mirko Cuello, Luis Alberto Lopez is still in the picture, Brandon Figueroa, so there's just a ton of guys in this weight class, and we just need to see him fight. Co-main event was Albert Ramirez, who himself belongs to a very stacked division. I didn't think it was overly impressive, beating Jerome Pampalone. It took him a few rounds. He did really not a lot was happening. He was obviously winning the fight, but it wasn't until the fifth, sixth round where he started to up the pressure and just kind of figured Pampalone out. And he wasn't even having to put together that many big or really clean shots. It didn't look like much of them were landing that cleanly, but he stopped him, and Pampalone just had nothing left and was just getting knocked down with every shot. I mean, you look at Cuello, his knockout, the body shot. He hurt Rios, knocked him down for I think the second or third time, and then just comes in and throws one body shot hook and just sends him down. And that was a brutal finish, and I loved that. Jose Aguero had a 100-91 win over Diego Alemán. Very solid performance there. Mike Perez and Christian Luis was a no contest. Perez was certainly winning the fight. In the end of the fourth round, Luis just goes down. I don't know if it was from a punch or something, and then just quits, but it's a no contest. It was just really, really weird. There was no commentary on this event either. There was no broadcast team, no host, no commentator, no interviewer, just Lupe Contreras announcing. That was the only guy. It was really, really weird, and I don't like when there's no commentary for situations like this where you have no idea what really happened. And then the other fight on the card was Francisco Fonseca upsetting Sofiane Umuiha, which was a pretty fun fight, but Fonseca honestly kind of dominated. I had him winning 97-92. He got a third-round knockdown in there over the 3-0 Sofiane Umuiha, who had a pretty good career ahead of him, a very solid amateur career. He was an Olympian and is 3-1 as a pro because he just got moved too fast against a tough fighter, and this is what happens. But yeah, I'm going to catch up on the PFL and BKFC cards. I did hear the PFL Africa card had a lot of really good finishes on it, so I'm going to check that out later. But moving on from there, let's talk about some news, and we have a boatload to get through. Starting with Boxer has officially announced their next deal on BBC. This is where they're going to be broadcast from now on. And as for news of this deal, we're hearing a lot. We're hearing it's only a year. We're hearing it's only 4 events a year. We're hearing that their budget is like $500,000 for a show. So it's really, really confusing what the new structure is. We have no idea because Ben Shalom is saying it's multi-year, multi-fight. And we're hearing that their first show is rumored to be September 27th in Birmingham with Fraser Clark, Jimmy TKV for the British heavyweight title. I'm not mad at that fight. I think that's a solid fight in terms of competitiveness. I think Clark wins probably. I do think that it's a bit of a stinker, and but hey, starting off your new deal with the British Heavyweight Championship kind of shows the level you're going to be putting on events at, and that's not a bad level. Just very British events. So we'll see. I'm interested, and like I said, we're hearing that's going to be September 27th, so not too far from here. And maybe if it is a year, they're just holding off to see if they can get a Sky Sports renewal, if they're going to get the DAZN deal. And it just kind of makes me wonder, where are they closer? Are they closer to a Sky Sports level of events with this, or like Channel 5 and Wasserman? So all remains to be seen, but at least they have a home. I'm not sure what this means for me as an American boxing fan. I'm assuming that they're just going to end up on Triller TV Plus here in the States, which is what they've been on ever since the Peacock deal randomly ended. So, I mean, that's fine with me. It's just really interesting. And they're not on the main BBC. They're going to be in BBC 2, BBC 3, and BBC iPlayer, which I'm not sure. I think that's like a website thing, but not BBC 1. So, I don't think there's going to be major events. But like I said, this is important for the sport because BBC is arguably the biggest channel over there probably, and having free boxing on it will definitely grow the sport. And so I'm excited for it. Now, like I said at the top of this episode, we had a ton of fights announced over the last few days, lots of events. So let's hop right into it which is probably the biggest one, Ennis versus Lima. That's right, Jaron Boots Ennis is back October 11th in Philly against Uisma Lima, who is I think like 14-1. Only loss comes to Aaron McKenna. This is his kind of debut on the big stage, I guess you could say. And this is Boots' debut at 154 pounds. As for this fight, I'm not mad at it. We know that Boots kind of wants to wet his feet in this new division and try and get a win before he hops right into a world title fight. Apparently, the big word on the street and what Eddie Hearn is saying is that they've already signed Boots to fight Virgil Ortiz Jr. in January, February on a Matchroom Golden Boy co-promotion. He said they've already worked out the deal. They're just waiting for Virgil to sign. Virgil's also supposed to have a fight in October, same month. So they're both supposed to get through their respective fights and then meet in a huge fight that could honestly be a pay-per-view if it's not on a Turkey card. So I'm excited for that. This is an official WBA eliminator when we already have a champion in Crawford and an interim champion in Uisma. So a lot of people are expecting Boots to come through this one and then fight Uisma for the what will likely be the then vacated main regular or super title at 154 pounds, which I'd be fine with. I'd be fine with Ennis versus Tejas. That's still a really good fight. As for this fight in itself, I'm happy Lima is getting an opportunity. I do think that Boots beats him, but I do think it's also a good fight for him. You know, I think that this is probably around the same level, if not a little bit more tough of a fight than Karen Chikadzian. You know, especially the rematch when that was a much closer and better fight than the first. So, you know, we'll just see what happens on October 11th. It's also the same day as Dave Allen, Arslanbek Makhmudov. So they're going to have the third Matchroom is doing their third back-to-back fight day in a row. They obviously in January had the Dalton Smith and Diego Pacheco fights. They've got a next gen show with Pat McCormack and then Sugar Nunez on September 6th. Those ones back-to-back, so that should be fun. And now we're going to have Dave Allen and Jaron Ennis, so both in pretty good fights. So I'm excited. It should be a good show. I'm hoping Lima brings a good fight, but it all remains to be seen. And I'm okay with this overall. I'm okay with Boots wetting his feet, getting a win. And then, but after that, needs to be big fights. Needs to be only world title, Virgil Ortiz level fights. I don't want to see him fight David Evanesian. I don't want to see him fight Karen Chikadzian. I want to see him fight the big dogs of the sport after this. We also the announcement of the Canelo Alvarez-Terence Crawford main undercard. Topping that, interestingly enough, actually, there kind of seems like it's going to be the co-main event is Callum Walsh versus Fernando Vargas Jr. We heard that this fight was in the works and was going to end up on this card. I'm not mad at it. Obviously, Callum Walsh is Dana White's only boxer he has signed at the moment. He fights with 360 promotions on UFC Fight Pass, and Dana White himself promotes him. So he's the only boxer Dana's been involved with, so it's not surprising he'll be on this show. Fernando Vargas Jr., obviously the son of Fernando Vargas, brother of Emiliano Vargas. He's also undefeated. You know, so him jumping into this fight is or onto this fight card is not super surprising. And I like this fight. I really do. I think that it's both of these guys stepping up to a level and both of them taking on their toughest test. I definitely think Callum Walsh wins the fight because I actually think he's a very good and tough boxer, and I think that he has a lot more potential in terms of like world title aspirations and stuff. I haven't really seen Fernando Vargas Jr. do too much as a pro as compared to how much I've seen from Callum Walsh. So I think Walsh wins that fight, but I'm not mad at it. Another battle of undefeated. You've got Christian and Billy and Lester Martinez in what may be the best fight in the super middleweight division. That is just absolutely fantastic. And Billy's going to be defending his WBC interim title, so he gets through this. He's got a shot at Canelo, especially putting him on the undercard on Netflix, him winning that, whoever wins this, and calling out Canelo. People may be down with it, especially if they have a big performance. But both these guys, high power, high knockout ratios. There's no way this fight is not going to be completely entertaining with the way they both fight. I cannot wait for it. Finally, we're seeing 168 deliver a fantastic fight outside of just Canelo. And actually, I shouldn't say that because we did have Edgar Berlanga and Hamza Shiraz, so the weight class is starting to heat up. I'd also love to see the winner of this get in with Hamza Shiraz. There's just so many fun possibilities, and I think that's a great fight. That should totally be the co-main event, in my opinion. And then lastly, Muhammad Alakel is going to be on here against Jason Ornelas, who's like 5-2. I saw not really anything to talk about there. I'm not surprised he's going to be on the card because he is, just like Turkey's Saudi prospect. I would have like to see him on the prelims. It seems like he's going to be on the main card, and I don't know if this is Zuffa Boxing and UFC just not really doing their fact-checking and just assuming, but they listed all of these fights as 10-rounders. The Billy Martinez fight, 1,000% should be 12 rounds, so I hope that gets corrected, and this is just a mistake. Walsh-Vargas at 10 rounds is what I expected, and that should be a 10-rounder. But then Alakel's fight is also at 10 rounds when he's fighting 6-rounders right now, and Ornelas is not a big step-up opponent. So that was really weird to me. I'm guessing he's just going to be another 6-rounder, and they just wrote it down wrong. But I'm also hoping that we get another fight to fill out the 4-5 main card, and then Alakel is just on the prelims. But I wouldn't be surprised if Turkey wants to put him on Netflix and boost him. They also announced that we are going to get this 3-day-long fight extravaganza in Vegas as part of the fight week. As Ring Magazine announced that Jarrell Miller and Michael Hunter have finalized a deal to fight on September 11th. That would be the Thursday of that week, potentially at the Fontainebleau in Las Vegas is what I heard. So this is essentially going to be just the level of like another average Matchroom or Top Rank show in Vegas at one of the casinos, not in an arena or anything like that. But I mean, hey, Jarrell Miller and Michael Hunter's a great heavyweight fight. Both Americans who want to, jump into that top discussion when they're not really there yet. Neither of them are at a great point in their career. I think that Jarrell Miller is on the verge of doing something big where, he had the Andy Ruiz fight. Everyone thought he won that except for the judges who had it a draw. Then he almost had the Jarek Chisora fight. Then he almost had the Fabio Wardley fight. And now he gets this, which is headlining a semi-re-out season big show during the biggest fight week of the year. So, hey, I'm really excited for that. I think it's awesome and lets us know, we are going to do 3 different fight cards this week, 2 to build it up. And they're not just going to be, BS fights. We know we're going to get fights on this undercard, which may be more like prospect stuff. We're also going to get one on Friday night, which is probably going to have a good headliner. So I'm totally cool with this. The only hiccup, Don King, who represents Michael Hunter, sent a cease and desist to Dana White and TKO and Sella for apparently he had the rights given to him by the WBA to put on the fight between Michael Hunter and Kubrat Pulev for the WBA regular heavyweight title as that was ordered. And, was saying, hey, I'm supposed to put on this fight, and you guys are just pulling him, which I don't know how Hunter was able to get the deal done without Don King knowing. But, after this fight was announced, he sent that, and this is also Don King, putting out a statement saying how he also represents Noah McCallion, and how Jake Paul tried to steal the Badu Jack fight from them when the WBC had ordered it, which was completely made up. So Don King is irrelevant in boxing. I don't understand how he has 2 guys that are in somewhat world title contention in Michael Hunter and Nora McCallion. They definitely need to get away from him. But, yeah, it's just really funny, and I doubt it'll come of anything. I really hope it doesn't end up being anything because I want to see this fight. We also had the announcement for UFC Rio. It's going to be held by Charles Oliveira returning against Rafael Fiziev on October 11th. So it's actually the same day as Boots versus Lima. And Oliveira fighting on a fight night is crazy. I don't know when the last time that happened was, if ever, really. He's had so many title fights. He's always been in big fights. And this is still a good fight. I like this. I like them saying, all right, let's do something fun. Let's get you on a fight night. Let's get you back home to Brazil. First time in 5 years. But they're giving him a good fight. A fight where he is fighting down the rankings, and he is, it's a bit of a bounce back, but it's a tough fight. I mean, Rafael Fiziev gave Justin Gaethje a great fight in March, a very competitive fight, and there's no saying he won't do the same with Oliveira. Oliveira just got knocked out, so he needs to, have a bit of a comeback, and this is a really quick turnaround for him. I don't love how quick of a turnaround it is, if I'm being honest. He just got knocked out, a little bit over a month ago, and now he's already got another fight booked. I think he should take a little bit more time out of the cage, but he's a fighter, and fighters will fight. But yeah, I really like that fight, and I love it headlining a fight night. That'll make it feel big. We also had the announcement from Queensberry on November 1st. We're going to have Joshua Buatsi versus Zach Parker. This is obviously Buatsi's light heavyweight debut. It's going to be an all light heavyweight card. So we'll also have on there the likes of Brad Ray versus Lyndon Arthur, which is my personal favorite fight of the card for the European title. I think it's a really evenly matched fight on the card. I think Arthur had a pretty good performance against Anthony Yard recently. Brad Ray obviously edging out a win over Shakan Pitters to win the belt, so that's a really, really good fight. You also have Daniel Lappin against Troy Jones on there, which is a bit interesting because Lappin just, had a really close fight and honestly eked out a potentially undeserving win over the British champion, Lewis Edmondson, and he's now going to fight the last English title challenger who came up short in Troy Jones. So it's a bit of a step back, but I'm happy Troy Jones is getting another opportunity because he did give Ezra Taylor a good fight. I think this one is also well matched, probably one that Lappin wins. But yeah, as for the main event, Buatsi and Parker, a bit of a mismatch. Zach Parker's been waiting for a decently big fight, and so I guess good for him for getting it, but Buatsi definitely beats him, and then Buatsi's going to hop into the Anthony Yarde conversation because we know that Yarde is going to lose to David Benavidez on November 22nd, and then they're both with Queensberry, sets up a huge fight there, and I hope that we see that one made. I'd also like to see Lewis Edmondson versus Ezra Taylor be added to this card. We know this fight's about to be ordered for the British and Commonwealth belts, and that they're both with Queensberry. They've got a little bit of a rivalry there. It makes all the sense in the world, and this is the perfect place for it to happen on if they're both ready. Oscar Collazo versus Jason Vason was also announced for the Fantasy Springs. Interestingly enough, we're going to play his other fight nights on September 20th. Co-main event's going to be Gabriela Fundora versus Ailin Granadino. So two, they're honestly Golden Boy's best fighters. Collazo's a unified champion. Fundora's an undisputed champion. I'm going to be honest, I don't really know either of these opponents, and I'm kind of ready for them, once they win these fights, to move up in weight. There's more challenges at 115 for Fundora and more champions to fight. There's definitely more challenges at 108 for Collazo to fight because there's not really a lot happening in each of their divisions, and they both definitely can move up. Collazo is very, very small, but I think he can make 108 for sure, and Fundora is she could go up to 140 probably. So she can definitely put on some weight and go up to 115. I hope that we see that after this. We also had the announcement of Lanier Perro taking on Jordan Thompson on November 1st. This one's for November 1st, I think, at the Career Royale with Omari Jones returning. Obviously, he's from Orlando, so they're going to have him on this card, potentially even in the co-main event. As for the fight itself, it's really interesting matchmaking from Matchroom. Obviously, Jordan Thompson has not fought in over 2 years, it will be, since losing to Jai Opetaia in a world title shot that he probably shouldn't have had. And then Lanier Perro has been waiting for a big fight. He's been going up the ranks and having good performances. So this is a weird fight for Matchroom to make, I feel, because if you're talking about wanting to boost Jordan Thompson, you're putting him in away from home off of a 2-year layoff, coming in at heavyweight for his first fight against a killer in Lanier Perro. So I think that this is being marketed a little bit maybe as the return of Jordan Thompson, but it's really welcome Lanier Perro and goodbye Jordan Thompson. That's how I see it, and I'm excited for it. It's just weird matchmaking, I feel. From there, we're going to move on to a little bit of a sadder topic. 2 boxers this week, or in the past week, I should say, have died in Japan. Actually, both fought on August 2nd, so they both just fought and horribly passed away, both from injuries sustained in the fight. This was Shigetoshi Kotari and Hiromasa Urakawa. I hope that I said that right. Like I said, they just both fought in Tokyo on the same card in August, and within a week, both passed from brain injuries from the fight. And it's just really, really sad, and it reminds you don't play boxing. And something needs to be done, especially in Japan, because I feel like this happens way too much there. It doesn't really happen that much in other parts of the world, and I think that's partially because if you look at America or the UK, they figured it out. The sanctioning bodies have been around for years, 100 years. They've already been through their ups and downs. They've already shortened it from 15 rounds to 12. They've learned what works and what doesn't and how to keep the fighters safe. Japanese boxing really just exploded in the past 10 years or so. And we now get a ton of events and a ton of fighters out of the air. And if you look at the way that these Japanese fighters fight, not a lot of defense and a whole lot of throwing and a whole lot of power punches being thrown. So it isn't crazy to look at it and say, yeah, I mean, these guys are giving it all that they've got. So, I mean, yeah, I can see how they're getting seriously injured here. So the Japanese Boxing Commission has had emergency meetings. They've been talking about ways to help, keep the fighters more safe and prevent tragedies like this from happening, because 2 in the same night is not a coincidence, it's a pattern. And something needs to be done. So they're going to be shortening these OPBF title fights from 12 to 10 rounds, getting more immediate ambulance and medical help on site, more thorough weight cut examinations, more thorough pre-fight medical checks. They're going to be replacing the CT scans with MRIs for every fighter. Just completely make sure that these guys are okay and ready to fight and good. 'Cause even when you look back to the Shigeoka fight in May, I mean, he didn't even get knocked down in that fight. It was competitive. He was in a coma for weeks after, and we didn't know if he was going to make it. Thank God he did, but it's just, man, it's a really, really scary game. And yeah, so I'm glad that they're now taking the precautions they need to fix this and help protect the fighters. Moving on from there, Anthony Joshua. Obviously, we know that him and Jake Paul is very much a real thing now, and the word on the street is that he's choosing between Tony Yoka and Jake Paul. The British Boxing Board of Control likely would not be sanctioning a fight between him and Jake Paul because of just the obvious skill and size difference between the two. And Eddie Hearn said it's more likely to take place in the United States, someplace like New York, which is fine with me. As for Yoka, there's also rumors that one's going to happen in Ghana. Frank Smith apparently was just in Ghana. I would like to see him fight in Africa. As for this Tony Yoka talk, I don't like the idea of him fighting Yoka because that's just a semi-easy fight. I saw somebody say, he fights Jake Paul, easy fight with a ton of money on the line, whereas Tony Yoka is a semi-easy fight with semi-good money on the line, and nobody really cares, and it's just kind of boring. Oh, okay, he's fighting that guy from a few years ago. Whereas you fight Jake Paul, listen, everybody in boxing would want to fight Jake Paul because he is low risk, very, very low risk, and very, very high reward. So absolutely take it. Absolutely take that fight. I have no problem with seeing Anthony Joshua, Jake Paul. Should it happen? No. Do I want it to happen? Yes. Why not? Throw him in there. See what happens. See how well he does. But, I mean, hey, everybody hates Jake Paul. AJ will knock him out for good. So we'll see how that goes if it does happen. But I really do feel like this may be happening at the end of the year, early next year. Andre Ward then also threw his hat into the ring and said, I want AJ. It's so weird. Like the Andre Ward one, obviously AJ responded and said, payday, payday, in the Canelo voice, which is funny. I don't know. I don't really have a lot of interest in seeing Andre Ward come back. He's very, very good, a better fighter than AJ probably overall, but he's also older and he's also smaller. So don't really have any interest in him seeing fight AJ either, but I don't know. The only one I'm okay with AJ fighting like this is Jake Paul, just because it's Jake Paul and it'd be crazy. Ryan Garcia and Pitbull Cruz are rumored to have a fight at super lightweight for Pitbull's 140-pound title. So obviously Garcia's comeback. Now listen, I like the Ryan Garcia-Pitbull Cruz fight. That almost happened in May. But there's no way Ryan Garcia is going to go down to 140. I'd be kind of surprised if Pitbull came up to like 147, just because he's not that big. I could honestly kind of feel like he should go down to 135. So I don't know. This is a little bit of an oddball to me. I wouldn't be mad at the fight, and I do think it's a good one. They both have big names, but I also wouldn't be mad if they both went another way. Bivol has undergone back surgery, and this very much explains why he did not fight Artur Beterbiev, why he's been pushing back the fight. He isn't trying to age him out. He just went through a serious back surgery and needs time to recover. That's why Beterbiev is taking a fight in the meantime. That being Dion Nicholson. It still should be Beterbiev, Benavidez, and Yard Nicholson on November 22nd, but that's another story for another day. Well, it's good to see that his surgery went well, and hopefully he can get back into training soon because we need that trilogy ASAP. Gervonta Davis's domestic violence case in Miami has also been dropped. Not really sure why. I don't think it was actually said why the case was dropped, but all I really care about is that, and well, one, I hope that if he did do those things, he should have to serve his justice because it's horrible. But two, if he's been dropped because he's, innocent or at least cleared, then okay, fine. Let's get you active. Get in a fight, dude. Come on. He's just been having the most disappointing boxing career of his generation, I feel, honestly, at this point. A boxing career that will not end. Manny Pacquiao is saying that he is going to come back in December. We don't know if this is going to be a fight against, of course, Mario Barrios in a rematch there. It could be Rolly Romero. It could be Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney. I mean, there's so many names that he could get thrown in with. I like to see the rematch with Barrios just because that makes a lot of sense. I also like to see the fight with Rolly Romero. There's a lot of stuff he could do, but it's just crazy to me that Pacquiao looked so good in July that he's now like actually going to stay and keep on fighting at 46. It's unbelievable. And just what a career, man. What a career. Keyshawn Davis has come out and like apologized for how he acted in the, falling apart of his fight with Edwin De Los Santos a couple months back, saying that he's going to be out of boxing for a year to get everything settled and get, everything right for him and his mental state and whatever. I mean, hey, like take the time you need. It is obviously unfortunate and another disappointing American boxing career when I feel like after that Baranchuk win, he was ready to strike hot and become the next big thing, the next big American superstar in boxing. And right when that happens, it all falls apart. So really, really disappointed, but it is what it is, I guess. The WBC apparently is also ordering Katie Taylor versus Chantel Cameron 3 for Taylor's undisputed super lightweight championships. Yo, give it to me. I know people want to say Katie Taylor, Alicia Baumgardner. For me, the Cameron trilogy makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we're not sure if Katie Taylor's ever going to fight again. If she does, I'm fine with the Cameron trilogy. They are one apiece. It is a good fight. It does make sense for the 140 belts because they're the best two in that division. As for the Baumgardner one, obviously everyone was saying, winner of the co-main and main should fight, but Baumgardner did not look great against Miranda. And if Serrano had won, I would have been saying, yeah, let's have them fight. Now that Serrano lost and Baumgardner didn't look good, I think that brings him more to a level playing field. Make Serrano Baumgardner 130 for the undisputed belts there. Do that. That's what I say. You do Taylor Cameron 3, Serrano Baumgardner. Bada bang. Boom. That's the fights. In my opinion, that's the fights. So hopefully those both happen. Layla Ali has also said she has no interest in returning. This is so weird because they asked her, would you come back? And she's like, yeah, I'd come back and fight Clarissa Shields or something. She was like, okay, let's fight. And then she's like, well, and everyone's obviously getting on her on Shields saying like, well, she's old and I'm part of that camp that I think I'd rather see Clarissa Shields fight Shadeja Green, but it is kind of funny how Ali said, I'll fight, for a lot of money. And then once they actually start throwing up that money for her, she's like, I have no interest really in coming back. I don't blame you. There's no need for you to come back. She's like almost 50, I feel. So not a lot of points. She would lose to Clarissa Shields today. But I don't know. I just want Shields to get into a really competitive fight. There's not much for her. There's really not. There's Green, there's Marshall, Cruz Dezern. That's it. And she's already beaten 2 of those. So I don't know. Danny Garcia is going to be returning to Brooklyn at the Barclays Center on October 18th. I think he's from Brooklyn or Philadelphia, so like around that area. East Coast guy. I mean, Barclays Center is pretty big. That's like a 20,000 seat basketball arena. So hopefully that means he's in a good fight with a good opponent. I do know that he just started like a promotion company, so maybe that's his event. Maybe he's fighting on a PBC card. Maybe he's fighting in a good fight. Maybe he's fighting a bum. But we also know that apparently Top Rank is going to be providing fighters for the undercard to keep him busy. They don't have a broadcast deal, so they need to keep these guys fighting. And, what way to get that done other than getting them on a fight card that needs fighters? So hopefully this can get built into a big fight. We see it on a accessible network or something like that, like DAZN maybe, or maybe, like I said, it is a PBC card. But yeah, looking forward to that should it happen, because like I said, it's not a very well organized event, it seems, or not a very big promotion organized event. So we'll see. Speaking of poorly organized events, Andrew Maloney has pulled out of his fight against RG Cortez for Saturday. This was going to be an IBF super flyweight eliminator. Apparently they were trying to change the venue of the date after already doing so multiple times, as well as changing the date multiple times. So Maloney just said, all right, I'm done with this. I'm out. So now Byron Rodriguez is going to step in. I'm not too familiar with him, so I'm guessing Cortez is still probably going to get the win. And then I don't know if this is still an eliminator. Maybe it is, but probably not. I don't blame Maloney for pulling out when they're trying to pull this kind of crap. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with this situation. If RG Cortez does win, if he becomes mandatory for Willibaldo Garcia, that's an interesting fight. I think they're both Mexican. But, or if Andrew Maloney comes back into the picture, who knows? But, really, really weird events there. Oscar Valdez, speaking of Mexico, Oscar Valdez versus Ricky Medina has been announced for Nogales, Mexico. I do not have the date written down for it. I'll double check when it is if I can find it, but I'm not really too familiar with this guy. I honestly kind of forgot about Oscar Valdez because he hasn't fought in like a year and a half. So I forgot that he was. I honestly forgot that he was still around. Uh, this is going to be on September 10th, so it's on a Wednesday, which is really weird. Just a couple of weeks out. I don't know. We'll see. Top Rank did kind of promote it a little bit, so I'm hopeful that we see something good there. But I don't know, man. Like, part of me is just like, just hang him up. Knowing guys like him, he'll win this fight. He'll get himself one more big fight, and then after that, once he loses another big fight, he'll hang him up. But Medina's 16-3, so not horrible, but probably not world level as Oscar Valdez has been in the past. Or sorry, he hasn't fought in like almost a year, not a year and a half. I have my dates wrong. I hate it when people do that, so I need to correct myself when I say it. Anyways, another light heavyweight fight from Queensberry: Willie Hutchinson versus Mark Jeffers on October 4th. Now this is an interesting one. This two guys coming off a loss. Two guys I think are probably around the same level. I would still favor Hutchinson as he's an actual 175er, and he has fought the tougher opposition and has the better wins. But I mean, Mark Jeffers, dude. I really think it's funny how he is a guy who had been trying to get the big fights, trying to get fights against Calum Simpson and Osleis Iglesias, stuff like that, and he's not getting them until he loses to Sean Hemphill. Then he's fighting Willie Hutchinson. So it's just funny how, to be honest, sometimes losing will get you the bigger fights more than winning will. They always say, "Oh, how do you become big? How do you get fans? Keep on winning." That is true. But if you can't get the opportunity to win against the good guys, you lose against an okay guy, then you're going to be, okay, well, we can beat him. Let's grab him. And that's what happens. We're also hearing that this co-main event to Nunez Diaz is in the works to be Adrian Curiel versus Pedro Guevara, which is a really good fight at 115. I think that's where they're both at. I would probably pick Guevara ahead of Curiel in that one. I could be wrong, but that's a really interesting fight, an important fight for the rankings, I would feel. In that division, so I'm totally down with it. I would side with Guevara, but who knows? That's a great Mexican 50-50 fight. GBM has also announced their next show. It's going to be September 27th in Sheffield again. Ben Crocker versus really good fight there. You're probably thinking Macomb is going to take this one. That's how it's being set up, but I don't know. That's a competitive fight. Co-main event: Tycee Gallagher versus Ellie Hellwell. Another competitive event, or competitive fight, I should say. Which for the British and Commonwealth belts at, I want to say, 122 pounds. So I love that fight. I think that one's competitive. Shaquille Thompson's back on this card. Hopefully not in a dud fight, because he almost had a Janibek world title fight. He almost fought for a unified world title, and then he went on to fight in like an 8-rounder against nobody. So it's so weird. I hope that they give him a meaningful fight, because he really could get into big and important fights, but he's just not. And then Greatest Krause as well. He's just like all first-round knockouts or something like that. I mean, he's 7-0 7 KOs. So I'm excited to see him come back and put on a show. So that should be good. GBM's been having great shows this year. And yeah, it was also announced for this next MVP card: Chris Avila versus Ariel Perez on August 20th. It's a really interesting fight. Ariel Perez is an undefeated 7-0 prospect out of Florida. Chris Avila is AT as a sidekick, to be honest. He's fought a lot on MVP and Misfits in the past. He's had really good performances against a lot of guys in different areas of crossover boxing. He's fought Dr. Mike, he's a YouTuber. Then he's fought, other MMA guys like Jeremy Stevens, or he's fought Jake Bostwick, who's from BKFC. He's fought Benson Henderson, and that was the first one that he actually lost in the Misfits Pro Tournament about a year ago. So he's now back in the ring against Ariel Perez in what I think is a really interesting fight, a very competitive fight. And yeah, that's just a really fun one where it's like, okay, like Chris Avila is good enough to be matched up with a guy who's, undefeated prospect. Is he going to be a world champion? We'll see, but that's a really well-made fight, and I'm very excited for that. That should be a really fun one to go on the prelims of that card. And that MVP fight night, dude, it's looking stacked. I'm excited for it. MVP's doing really good things, and they were just teasing. I think that it looks like they're in a new place. Looks like Brazil. They've got a lot of Brazilian fighters. Maybe they're setting up a card there. Who knows? But their ceiling is very high. And then lastly, speaking of MVP, this is just a fun thing. Jake Paul, obviously we know that he is going to start suing people who talk about him rigging fights, because it's, they're doing it without any backing. The first of which was Piers Morgan. He officially sent him like a letter, I think, or tried to start suing him, and then immediately Piers Morgan issues an apology, saying I didn't mean that he fakes the fights. I just mean that he is setting up poor matches and is convincing people to watch him. I never thought that he was setting them up, when he literally said he's rigging fights. So it's just so funny how as soon as he talks all the smack, and then when the papers get served, and then it was funny because he was responding to random tweets saying no, I didn't apologize, I just retracted my statement. And I'm like, dude, just don't even respond to stuff like this. So it's funny. I am curious if this is going to have an impact, after guys like this happen, where they do mention this and then Jake Paul sues them and then they take it back. So I'm curious if the sentiment will start to change towards Jake Paul. It probably won't, honestly, but maybe people in Piers Morgan's position of being a well-established guy, they will stop making these kind of comments. But that's all I've got for today. It was a big episode. Going to do another one probably on Friday, where we'll talk about a huge Saturday in combat sports. Moses Atama, Dillian White on top of a really stacked Saudi card. Not their best one, but some fun fights on there. And they also got UFC 319, DDP versus Hamzat, a phenomenal middleweight title fight. Probably one of the best fights on the UFC calendar this year. With a stacked card they've got. Every fight on there is interesting to me. So really excited for that. You've got Omar Trinidad fighting on Friday. You've got a Pro Box TV card on Friday. And you've got the next event in the PFL World Tournament, the finals, 3 of which will be tournament finals, and we'll close out another week of championship fights in the PFL. We'll have more champions crowned. We also have the return of Dana White Contender Series the next 8 or 9 weeks, I think. That starts tonight, actually. Tuesday, August 12th, with the first batch of 5 fights. So looking forward to that. Should be a fun season. Hopefully some more big new prospects jump out. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good week, and peace out.